Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Samad Masood and I'm back with another video. First of all, hope you guys are keeping safe under this COVID environment. And secondly, the reason of making this video is that I was going through my emails and I came across various questions asked upon my previous videos, especially on how to attempt Cima exams and the Cima PER. So I thought of making a question and answer video based upon the questions I received from people around the world. I'm going to talk them through one by one, and I make sure that I answer all of your questions. After this video, even if you guys are missing out on something or wanted to ask any more questions, please feel free to email me at heysarmad@gmail.com. I will put my email address in the description so that you can ask further questions should you have any. Coming to this question, number one, I came across your email as I was scrolling through the Cima students and member forum. I need your assistance on how to pass the strategic level. I just started now and I don't know where to go. Please advise on where to start, which module to start with between E3, P3 and F3. Also, how to go about the objective tests, and finally the case study. This is a very good question and a very comprehensive one, and I'll try to make sure that I answer each bit of this question one by one. So starting with which module to start. I think what my understanding is that you have exemptions from your previous based upon your previous qualification, and I believe this is your first experience with the CIMA exams. Which module to start with? I would say go with the financial pillar first, so the F3. And the reason why I say is I found it very difficult, so I would say just start with the difficult one and then do P3 and E3, which is the easiest one. The second thing is in objective exams, and it will apply across all the CIMA levels such as management, operational, or strategic levels. Practice is the key. So just practice, practice, and practice. For the practice to do, it's better if you choose a number of different exam kits so that you tend to come across various sorts of questions, a variety of questions. This will help you in developing an in-depth understanding of how the question come into an exam, because it's like a 90-minute exam with 60 questions to attempt. So you have roughly about 90 seconds or 1.5 minutes per question. So you don't have enough time to think, and you need to be prepared for that. And for that preparation to happen, practice is the key. Different exam kits address the questions in a different manner. So if you go through them one by one, so you go through one institute exam kit and go through another exam kit, what will happen is that you will have a variety of experience, and you can certainly pick the question. It's highly likely that in the examination hall you pick up the question and answer straight away. For that to happen, also you need to attempt timed mocks. So make sure that if you just pick up like random 90 questions from a question bank, so you make sure you time yourself. What happens is that at first you might lose out on 10-15 questions because you do not have enough practice, you do not have enough knowledge or deep understanding of the question. But with the passage of time, once you've attempted few mocks, you can definitely see an improvement in yourself, and making sure that you're following the time and you're setting yourself in a more of an exam environment. Three things which I've discussed so far is go with the difficult one, and then for the objective tests especially is practice, and then attempting timed mocks. And I also asked about exam tips. So I would say that no matter how hard you have worked, it's worth attempting exam in a smart manner. So you need to make sure that you understand all questions carry equal marks. So you need to attempt each of the questions, not leave any question simply because you might lose out a very important mark that will contribute in your, or that might be like a deciding factor on passing or failing, because you need to have 42 out of 60 questions, which is 70% effectively. if you are leaving one or two empty or not answering any question, you effectively losing out on those marks which you might get based upon your best guess. Also, you need to make sure you should not waste time on one question. For example, it happened with me on one of the exams that spent good amount of 3 minutes on question number one, and even after spending those 3 minutes on question number one, I was not able to calculate it correctly. So I slightly panicked, but then I quickly recovered. Well, let's just go to the next one. Then I looked at the next one. That one was quite difficult as well, so I just flagged it and skipped it straight away without even spending or wasting more time on it. And what I found later was that as I progressed into the further question bank, the questions become more predictable, easier, or what do you call it, easy marks. So I just clicked on the right answers and moved forward, finished the question bank, and came back for the question number one, and I couldn't really get them correct, but I passed the exams simply because I kept my nerves and I made sure that I'm answering each of the questions and thinking in my mind that answering that all questions carry equal marks. So some of them might be difficult, some of them might be easy. So that's how you should work as well. Second thing you need to make sure is you need to keep an eye on the clock. So you need to make sure that you're not spending more than 90 seconds per question. If you have spent, like I said in my previous point, that if you are spending more than 90 seconds, you should be going to the next question straight away. Otherwise, you might lose your time on the other questions. So you make sure that you keep an eye on the clock. Once 90 seconds are passed, just make your best guess and move on. If you are going into a lengthy calculation, for example, in the financial pillar, you have lengthy calculations sometime, I would say just skip it because there will be easier questions later. So keep a close eye on the requirement. So make sure there may be multiple options. In fact, there are about 10% of the questions which have answers like select all that apply. So make sure you're not shy away from answering even one option out of the 5 or all of the options. Because it is entirely possible that in that question either one is the correct answer or 2 or 3 or even all of them. And these are about, I think they tend to be about 10% or 6 questions out of the 60 total question bank of the objective exams back to back before you're attempting the case study. Study has 3 tasks of 1 hour each. Previously in operational and management case study are a bit different. They have different sorts of questions. The total exam time is 3 hours, but I think they got like 4 different tasks each. Strategic case study, there will be 150 marks, so you need to secure 80 marks to pass the exam, provided that you are demonstrating all the Cima skills that are required to a minimum level, so like 85 or 90 marks, and you've met the 3 out of 4 Cima skills. You might fail on that exam. Well, in fact, you will fail on that exam if you've not answered the 4th correctly. In this strategic case study, you will have about 8 to 10 weeks before the exam. You will have that case in front of you. What you need to make sure is that in the strategic one, there's less technical information required, which is in comparison to the operational management case study. Because in operational case study, they tend to want you to demonstrate more of the technical side rather than asking your opinion. In strategic case study, there will be less technical information or technical requirements, but there will be more focus on your commercial awareness, business acumen, and strategic thinking. In Urdu, we say "ghol ke bhi jana," meaning that you need to know the case study inside out. You need to apply the key models, theories to answer the specific requirement, which means that you need to know the important data and information which you can reflect back into your answers. Although you will have an opportunity to look at the case study in the actual exam, but I won't recommend that simply because you won't have enough time to go back and forth to all the information that is provided in the case study. Because what I have experienced in the actual exam, that I had to open the case study once, and what I found was that I had to go to the specific page number to pull out the necessary information that I was about to reflect in my answers. Memorize some of the important data, calculate all the key ratios. And I think that's the main reason why this case study is given 6 to 8 weeks before the exam. Because if you are doing that in actual exam, you might be wasting your precious time of responding to the answer by looking at the case study. Also, an important tip I would like to give is that read the news article at the end of the case study. So these are some of the very important bits that sometimes be asked in the question paper, and you need to know the statistics that are mentioned there, the reputation of the business, what's going on in the markets, and sometimes what happens is that your key response is from reading those news articles. You can also respond back on from real life examples similar to what is the case study based upon. You need to study them and make sure what's happening in their market, and what are some of the initiatives they are taking, for example, cost cutting or rebranding or restructuring the business. And you can apply those real life examples into your exams. For example, in my case study, one of the questions was that it was based on a retail industry, so the big retail markets such as Asda, Tesco's. So what I did was that I did enough research on these retail markets, and I pulled out, I think it was around sugar tax that was about to be incorporated into the UK markets. So I read a lot about about the sugar tax and the regulations that were surrounding them, and and that was quite helpful in my actual exam. Also, what happens in the actual exam is that the scenario is built around your case study. For example, I remember, if I remember correctly, back when I was attempting my operational exam, it was on a florist. So they were talking about all the flowers they were selling. They were a family business. They were selling roses and different sort of flowers for different sort of events. And what we were thinking was that okay, it's quite a nice case study. And what will happen? What happened in the actual exam was that a storm came, and the fields were destroyed. So we had to do a lot of contingency planning, and questions were asked around that situation. So, I mean, that's how it happens, that they build a scenario in the case study and then they ask questions in the same series, or maybe just take a different turn just to test the candidates on their understanding on their business acumen and commercial awareness. You can also bring up questions from your real life. For example, if there is an example, if a management strategy has been chosen in your existing what do you call a company, you can use that. So for example, if your company management has taken a strategy or taken a direction, and you think that your answer is somehow relatable, or you can create a situation backed by an evidence from your real life situation, you can definitely key in. For example, in one of the response I've written, I can remember that there was a rebranding question and restructuring question, and my organization has gone through that rebranding and restructuring. So I picked up examples from my existing employer, and I incorporated into my answers the strategies we've taken as an employer. So yeah, things like that are very helpful. But also the most important thing in your response is your structure. So I mean, what you need to make sure is that you answer the requirement, answer the question. If there are in a statement there are terms like and or, if there is an and, which means that there will be two separate requirements in the question. In this question, especially in the strategic or even in the previous ones, it's more of like in the form of an email. So you make sure you have like introduction, you have like a good form of greeting, for example, good morning or good evening, Mr. XX. And then you can say, you can then thank them, thank you for asking, thank you for your email. My response is in regarding of your requirement, so you can say something like that. And then just make sure that you have a good opening. You just have one or two lines describing the requirement, so you make sure that they understand, that you understand the requirement properly, and then go with each requirement one by one. If you want to make a bullet points, well and good. I think this is a good way as well, reason being that you tend to remember what you're gonna say in your response, and it's also addressing the question. And if you want to do in a paragraph format, that's also good. Make sure you spend like 5 to 10 minutes planning the answer. If you're not that kind of person which you want to plan, you can go through the other way, which is like writing the introduction, making the bullet points as you are doing, and then make a good closing and a closing greeting as well. I was more of like a person where before looking at the requirement, I just go and type into the introduction and the closing, and then I started to filling in the body of the answer. What I also used to do was I used to copy my previous response and paste it into the question number 2, so that I do not waste time on the greetings. And so these are basically easiest marks to get on. You have a good introduction, you respond back to the requirement, and you answer each of the requirement one by one. Some people I've seen, they have got like separate, they scribble on a rough paper with all the points they're about to discuss, and then they spend like 5-10 minutes on that scribbling, and then they transfer that on the actual paper. It depends how you want to do it. It depends whether you're a scribbly type of person or a person that goes straight on to answering the question. It entirely depends on you. Both strategies are very good and people have passed their exams, but what you need to make sure is that you also spend an hour on the question. If you are given an hour for the whole task, you have to spend a whole hour. So they will have tasks for 1 hour, and there will be subtasks divided by the words like and or. So make sure that you have keep an eye on the time and stick with it. So you keep a time for reading the requirement, and then developing the structure, whether it's by scribbling or whether going straight to the answer, and then writing down the actual answer. What I used to do in my response was I used to write the closing first. That the structure has easy marks. So you have greeting, then have a 2 or 3 introductory sentence, and then the body, and then the closing thing. So it is you are being judged on the structure of your exam, first of all. Secondly, I used to do the closing first simply because that even if I ran out of time, I will not give an impression to the examiner that I have missed up on closing. Impression to the examiner that I have completely submitted my answer and I have not messed up on time management. So you need to make sure that it's just a professional exam, and the case study questions are usually open-ended. There are no right or wrong answers. As long as you have sufficient evidence-based argument, you will pass through. But also make sure that you're not saying anything illegal. People around the world attempt this exam, and they all have different sort of experiences and backgrounds, and so this is how this exam is more interesting from an examiner point of view, that he tends to see a variety of response from people across the world. And so you need to make sure that whatever story you are going to tell, it should be backed by a sufficient argument or evidence, be it from your personal life, be it from your professional life, from your industry, or from the industry the actual case study relates to. Okay, I think I've answered this question quite in detail. Let's go through some other questions as well. How many months do I roughly need to study and do revision tests for the objective test and do revision for the objective test, and how many months do I need to prepare for the case study? I think 6 to 8 weeks for the objective test will be fine, and slightly more for the case study will do. Simply because I think you're given the case study 8 weeks before the actual exam, so I would say utilize those 8 weeks for the case study exam, and you will be fine. People have studied. I know they've been. I've had some really exceptional students who managed to complete their exams in much shorter span of time, but there are exceptions always, and every person have different experience, have they got different what do you call it, um, availabilities and timetables. So you need to make sure that you stick with what is more feasible with you. But yeah, as a generic, it's 6 to 8 weeks per exam is sufficient. Okay, how many exams should I attempt at a time? I mean, personally, I attempted one exam, one module at a time, simply because it was going more in line with my other job and personal responsibilities. So I could manage one at a time. I could have managed more if I wanted, but I just stick with one. I've seen some of my colleagues; they have done two exams at a time, but more or less what happened is that it was more of like 6 to 8 weeks period. Then they attempt the first exam, and then after 2 weeks they've attempted another and passed as well. So it's entirely depending upon you, the way you want it. If you ask me, I've done one at a time. Okay, do I have to thoroughly read the textbook, or I need to do more revision tests? Okay, this you do not have to read the textbook. Um, I think the test exam kits are the best way to practice. If you have more than one exam kit, which means that you have exam kit from one institute and then exam kit for another institute or author, it's the best to practice on both of them. If you get another one, the third one, I would say go right away. But if even if you want to more, if you do not have enough resources, I would say just go to the textbook for the sake of practicing the questions only. So there are questions within the chapter and sometimes at the end of the chapter as well. Question is, I'm panicking as I don't want to fail this. However, I'm grateful for the info and advice that you gave me. I'm not attending classes, so I don't know if that will be of my disadvantage. I am based in South Africa and the classes are expensive for me. Yeah, I would say practice on your own is sufficient. You do not necessarily have to go to a college to attend them. I would say if you do have a basic accountancy knowledge and I'm hoping you're coming from accountancy background from your school and colleges, and sometimes from if you are doing this after your university, you definitely have a basic understanding of how these exams work and what are the basic concepts of accountancy. So I would say just practice will be the key, and I'm sure by reading but practicing the exam kits, you will be you will be in a good place to pass those exams. However, for case study, I've seen people passing on their own. I've seen people going to college. I myself went to college to for the case study. It's good to have a mentor if you are in a situation where you do not have enough resources. I would say maybe go for the cheaper option, go through the remote learning, where you'll have to pay a subsidized amount and go for what you wanted, because some of the institutes, they also provide online marking as well. So it's worth to get yourself tested on the actual mock exam and get it marked. In this way, you can not only you can save some money as well, and the purpose will be fulfilled. Okay, the last question is, are you now a qualified CGMA? Did you do your PER before or after the strategic level? What happens after passing strategic level? Yes, I am ACMA, CGMA. I've done PER and I've submitted it as it is required to submit after the strategic level. And I've also prepared a PER guidance, which you guys can see on the link below. Okay, that's pretty much it as far as the Cima exams are concerned. I didn't thought for a moment that it will take me that long to answer all those questions. I will make another video on Cima PER question and answers, and I will post it next couple of days. If you guys still have any more questions, please send me an email on this email address that you are seeing on your screen now. Thanks very much for watching. Please stay home and stay safe.